The asteroid field surrounding Dracarys Prime shimmered with bioluminescent dust, the remnants of ancient dragon nests that had once thrived among the stars. Velthrixa, the dragon queen, coiled her massive serpentine form around the largest fragment, her scales reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. She was a creature of legend, her kind having ruled this sector of space for millennia before the younger races had even discovered fire. But now she mourned. Her clutch, 17 eggs, each containing a future star WRM, had been destroyed in a cowardly raid by the Krell Collective. The silicon-based marauders sought the dragon eggs for their genetic material, hoping to synthesize their own version of the dragon's natural faster-than-light capabilities. They had failed to steal the eggs, but in their retreat, they had detonated plasma charges that incinerated Velthrix's entire brood. For 73 cycles, she had remained here, her grief a palpable force that caused nearby ships to malfunction, their instruments scrambled by the psychic weight of her sorrow. The human salvage vessel Wandering Star should have known better than to enter this region of space. Every species in the known galaxy had marked it as forbidden territory. But humans, as Velthrixa had learned, rarely heeded warnings that didn't come with immediate consequences. She sensed the small craft's approach and prepared to unleash her fury. Let these ignorant primates learn why dragons were feared across 1,000 worlds. Her consciousness reached out, ready to fry their ship's systems and send them tumbling into the void. Then she felt it. A mind unlike any she had touched before, small, young, curious rather than afraid. Velthrixa hesitated, her psychic assault wavering. In her long life, she had encountered many species, but none had ever approached her grief with such openness. Most sentients recoiled from the intensity of her sorrow, their minds unable to process the depth of a mother's loss when that mother was a being who had lived for 15,000 years. But this mind didn't recoil. It reached back. The small human shuttle detached from the wandering star and drifted closer to her asteroid. Velthrixa could have destroyed it with a thought, but curiosity, an emotion she hadn't felt since her eggs had been destroyed, stayed her wrath. The shuttle's airlock opened, and a figure emerged in a worn environment suit. A child. No, a young human male, barely into what they called adolescence. He couldn't have been more than 12 standard years old. Aaron had never seen anything like the Dragon Queen. In the stories his grandmother told back on New Terra, dragons were smaller things, bound to planets and primitive mythology. But Velthrixa was as large as his family's entire station, her body a living constellation of silver and violet scales that pulsed with inner light. Her eyes, each one larger than his shuttle, fixed upon him with an intelligence that made him feel simultaneously insignificant and profoundly seen. He should have been terrified. The suit's biomonitors were screaming warnings about dangerous radiation levels and unexplained electromagnetic anomalies. But Aaron had spent his short life in space, orphaned at 6 when his parents' mining rig had collapsed. He had learned early that the universe was vast and dangerous, but also that sometimes the most frightening things were just lonely, and the Dragon Queen was lonely. He could feel it, somehow, like a frequency just below hearing but perceived in his bones. "I'm sorry," Aaron said, his voice transmitted through the suit's speakers. He knew she probably couldn't understand human speech, but he said it anyway. "I'm sorry for your loss." Velthrix's massive head tilted, a gesture that would have caused gravitational shifts on a smaller asteroid. This human child spoke to her grief directly, without preamble or platitude. How did he know? She reached into his mind more gently this time, careful not to overwhelm his fragile primate consciousness. What she found astonished her. Humans, she discovered, were empaths, not in the trained, disciplined way of the Azurians or the hive-minded chorus, but in a raw, instinctive manner. They felt each other's pain across vast distances, even across time, carrying the sorrows of ancestors they'd never met. This boy's mind was a tapestry of losses. His parents, friends who had died in the harsh conditions of frontier space, even the abstract grief for a planet called Earth that his species had left behind generations ago. Humans didn't live long, barely a century even with their best medicine, but they packed their brief existence with such intensity of feeling that it rivaled species who lived for millennia. Aaron felt the Dragon Queen in his thoughts, and rather than resist, he opened himself. Further, he showed her his memories. The last time he'd held his mother's hand before the accident. The cold loneliness of the orphan barracks on Station Kepler 7. The ache he carried every day for a family he could barely remember. It doesn't go away, he transmitted, his voice cracking. The hurt. But you learn to carry it. That's what humans do. We carry impossible things. Velfrixa withdrew from his mind, processing what she had learned. This species, these brief-lived creatures who barely registered in galactic history, had evolved an extraordinary adaptation. They survived not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through their capacity to endure suffering and transform it into something else. Into art, into determination, into bonds with others who hurt. She unfurled one of her massive claws. A single talon was larger than Aaron's shuttle, and from a pocket dimension woven into her own being, she retrieved something that made the boy gasp that an egg. Whole and intact that it was impossible. Aaron had heard the psychic scream that had echoed through this sector when the clutch was destroyed. Every sentient being within 20 light-years had felt it. But here, cradled in the Dragon Queen's claw, was proof that at least one had survived. I found it. Velfrix's voice resonated in Aaron's mind, and he understood her perfectly now, shielded by debris. But I believe myself unworthy to tend it. What kind of mother fails to protect her young? Aaron understood grief, but he also understood something the ancient Dragon Queen had forgotten in her sorrow. Guilt and loss were not the same as unworthiness. You're still here, he said simply. You survived. That means you can try again. Such simple words from such a simple creature. Yet they carried a truth that Velfrix's millennia of experience had obscured. Her other young were gone, yes, but one remained. And she remained. That was not failure. That was the foundation of hope. She looked at the human boy floating in the void, protected only by his fragile suit and his indomitable spirit, and made a decision that would ripple across the galaxy for centuries to come. Aaron of the humans, she spoke directly into his mind. I name you clutch brother to my remaining young. When she hatches, she will know of the small creature who reminded her mother that survival itself is a victory. In the years that followed, the bond between humanity and the dragon kind would reshape galactic politics. The Krell Collective would face the combined wrath of both species. And Aaron, the orphan boy from nowhere, would become the first human dragon rider, proving that sometimes the smallest beings carry the largest hearts. But in that moment, in the silence of the asteroid field, Velfrixa simply mourned no longer. She had her grief still. It would never fully leave. But she also had purpose and hope, and a strange new friend who understood that carrying pain was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. That was the human way. And perhaps, the Dragon Queen thought, it was a way worth learning.